Okay, and hi there. Welcome to this exam technique tutorial. This is looking at the paper one by Edexcel or Pearson. It's going to look at question 2B, which is in the Western Front section. And as you can see here, we've got an example. It's how would you follow up source B to find out the problems involved in performing operations on the Western Front. And you have this template here to work with. It's worth 4 marks, and you should be spending about 5 minutes on it. So, firstly, we break this down, have a look at the information. We've got source B just here, and within this, we've got this text we would have to analyze and examine. We've already done this with a previous question, but we're going to be looking at developing an inquiry from this. So the question is, how would we follow up this? And there's a focus element, performing operations on the Western Front. And it tells us what we need to do. So when reading this, we've got a couple of information elements there that work. Firstly, is the conditions. Blood loss seems to be a big killer because it talks about blood everywhere, soaked into the clothes in the blood, pools of blood on the stretchers. So blood loss is a big focus. We've also got this idea of transfusions not occurring very often, where it says, I could only transfuse the occasional patient. So looking at this, that's going to be my focus. Now, 6 minutes maximum, try for 5. The command word is follow up. We're doing an inquiry, and therefore we've got to think, what could we therefore do with this? So, what's the question asking? First stage, detail in B that I would follow up. Be specific. If you can, develop a quote. If it's, I'm just going to write quote there, or Q. If it's a picture, look towards selecting a specific detail within that picture. And then a question you would ask. And the question has to be related to the detail. Okay? It has to be related to that. It can't be something independent of that. The second half of the sheet then says what type of source I could use. And that, again, is about being specific with regards to that. And we'll talk about more of that later. And then again, linking this together, how might it help answer the question? So how would that source help think about your inquiry question, which we saw on the previous slide? So here's the mark scheme for the exam board after. Well, award 1 mark for selecting a detail and 1 mark for a question linked to it. Notice linked. 1 mark for identification of an appropriate source and 1 mark for an answer that shows how it might help the chosen follow-up question. So in other words, this section here. But notice these 2 are marked separately. It's in effect 4 marks, but it's 2 and 2. So if you don't get the first part right, you're not going to get part 2 right either. If you get part 3 wrong, you can't get part 4 correct. So you might be able to get 2 marks or 4 marks, but you're never going to get 1 or 3, really, because of how this has been done. So here, I've got an answer, and it looks okay, but it would get 0. If we have a look, the detailed follow-up would be the use of blood transfusion. The question I would ask would be, how often did blood transfusions take place? The type of source I could use would be history books about the period. And finally, it would help me to find out how often blood transfusions took place. The first part is not specific enough. You should look at quoting or referring to a detail in the image. So because that's not going to score any points, it means that's not going to get anything either. The third point isn't specific enough. History books could be anything, which means that this isn't going to get anything. So unfortunately, it's 0. So here's a better answer, where the dot says I could only transfuse the occasional patient. So I'm going to get 1 mark for that. I've selected a detail. I'm still keeping that same quote. I'm being more specific here. The Army medical records from hospitals that show the number of blood transfusions that took place. That's going to be a bit more detailed. I could have made it even more detailed by saying it's talking about being on the Western Front. And the information would help me understand would be as rare as they suggest. So that would get that. So what types of sources you could get? We've got regimental records, hospital records at a good time. We've got lots of information here. You can pause it and have a look. I hope this has been useful. If there's any information you want to ask about, please feel free to ask me. Thank you for listening.